we're going to show a few films so you can get an idea of how we formed and where we're going to, because it is an absolute disgrace that, and this day and age, that we've had to get together with a big group of women across the unions to fight the misogyny that is clearly within our trade union and labour movement. And it's symptomatic of the undemocratic structures that we have when we should be about change. And until we tackle this, we don't see how we are going to be really fit for purpose as fighting unions. Me to You started up a couple of years ago. There've been lots of conversations before that. And we're just going to show you a few of the films that we've made with real news, which explains our beginnings and why we came together.
Sexual harassment and violence, it's endemic, isn't it, in the trade union movement?
We all know what goes on, but the climate of fear means that a lot of officers feel that they can't speak up about it.
It's a very sexist culture, and abuse is ignored and overlooked.
When a woman comes forward about being harassed or discriminated in the workplace, there are very few options for her to fight.
There was no way I was going to go to a bloody employment tribunal with these powerful people who've been bullying me.
Some of the branch secretaries didn't necessarily respect the fact that a young woman was coming in. I've had inappropriate messages, and I think now that I'm General Secretary, one of my key things is no other employee in our union should have to go through what I went through.
I'm the co-founder of Can't Buy My Silence, and both of us have fallen foul of the misuse of non-disclosure agreements. Myself, it was with Harvey Weinstein. You then become complicit in a lie. You cannot speak about your own trauma.
It increases the sense of guilt and shame, which all women feel when something dreadful's happened to them anyway.
It's wrong that we put them in place to silence women in order to protect the perpetrators, because there's no other way of looking at it. The Me Too movement really bolstered women's feelings towards tackling sexual harassment and violence. I think we've just got to keep that momentum going. Sisters to the Front is an organisation led by female trade union officials, for trade union officials and employees. We got together in February 2020. A group of attendees put together a charter for General Secretaries against sexual harassment and violence.
The most important thing for us is that people come and share their testimony on our website.
We won't accept sexual harassment and violence, and people that think that it's okay have no place in our movement. I'm Sarah Woolley. I work for the Bakers Food and Allied Workers Union. I became an officer at 28, and I was the youngest officer and youngest woman to take a paid position in our union. And the misogyny started pretty much straight away, to be fair. It was pretty quick. How can you help me? What do you know? You're a young woman. And this is from like an older male branch secretary who'd got more women working on the lines in his factory than he'd got men, but how was I supposed to help him? The sexism too, wouldn't you be better back at Greg's behind the counter making the sandwiches than doing this and talking to bosses? And it was generally when they didn't get the answer that they wanted. You know, if I didn't say yes as a case, even though it was blatantly obvious that there wasn't. And I remember once being told by a colleague at an event, a bit like this, maybe not quite like this, more trade union-y, but I'm going to get you wasted, you don't drink enough. And I sat thinking that's probably because you're here and I don't actually want to get wasted with you. But it's things like that that just happen, and it's kind of an everyday thing for women in the movement. And, you know, we've not seen the video with Claire in, and but I would off the Me To You website, I would really urge you to watch the video of Claire Laycock, because compared to her situation, these were very mild. That's the next video. Oh, it's the next video, so you will see it. I was harassed by a branch secretary who threatened me. I complained to my employer, nothing was done, and now he holds a senior elected lay position in our trade union movement, is now effectively my boss. And whilst his attitude and behaviour now is a world away from what it was back in 2017, it cannot possibly be right that somebody has gone to work, been harassed, reported it to their employer, and now that person is in a senior position in the movement. Through Me to You, we've spoke to hundreds, literally hundreds of women, either verbally or via email, who are working and active in our movement, who have been assaulted, harassed, silenced, threatened, and pushed out of our movement. And not just by men, which is even more shocking, the amount of women in senior leadership positions as well that just aren't doing enough to speak out and support other sisters is shocking. And I think sometimes senior people in our movement forget that without members, there is no senior positions in our union movement, yet the sense of entitlement and a lack of accountability can just lead to this toxic environment to work in or even, be active in. And whilst most of the stuff that we put out through Me to You is focused on some of the worst examples in two particular unions, we know from talking to sisters in our meetings that we hold generally once a month that it's an issue throughout the movement. I don't think there's any union within the trade union movement that have not got an issue with sexual harassment, violence or misogyny, or a mixture of all three. And we've been very clear that perpetrators have no place in our trade union movement. Misogyny and sexism should not exist in a movement that has more women than men in, and that a movement that is supposed to be the beacon. We are the people that hold employers to account, yet if we've got issues where women are being pushed out and silenced, how do we do that? It's so hypocritical. I'm incredibly proud to be part of Me to You. It doesn't often make me friends in the trade union movement, which is quite interesting at times. But I want our members, particularly our young women members, to progress in the movement just as I've been able to do. But it's got to be safe for them to be able to do so. They can't be attacked, they can't be asked who they've slept with to get to the position that they're in, because we won't ask that of a man. And they definitely shouldn't be silenced or pushed out if something's not right and they're brave enough to challenge it. It's a shame that there's not more of us in senior positions in the movement that are doing the same and that are calling out of it. But, I don't want to be sat here in 40 years' time saying sexual harassment, violence and misogyny are still a problem in our trade union movement, just like some of our sisters that are a bit older than us are saying now. And I know that Me to You will help ensure that that isn't the case. So we'll probably have another video now, but please do get involved, and hopefully now there's a few more of you in here we can have a discussion too.
I was a regional official and I worked for the GMB for 12 years after a couple of years being a shop steward. For the first 2 years that I worked for the GMB, I was sexually abused and psychologically abused by a colleague. I had the support of my line manager at the time, who did not have the full story. He did everything he could to support me and would say, come on, what would you tell a member to do? What would you tell a member to do? I had good friends in the London region at the GMB who also could see with their own eyes some of what was happening and also tried to encourage me to raise a complaint, but it just didn't feel possible. I ended up leaving the GMB because of a sexual attack in a workplace from one of the branch secretaries, which kind of triggered the whole thing. So I had a breakdown nearly a year away from work, and I realised that I couldn't go back. Expectations for TSSA were that things would be different. They had a very active equalities agenda. It seemed like a fresh new opportunity when I started there. Christmas party in 2018, went for a meal. There was a lot of drinking, a lot of Christmas spirit, if you like. And then in one of the pubs later on, the General Secretary came over to me, put his arm over my front and asked to kiss me. I said to him, "You're my boss." And he went away. He was taken away by other colleagues, but then he came back over and said, "I'm being told I'm not allowed to kiss you. Do you want to go outside?" Another colleague came over and we went off to the ladies' loos. to stand in there. And when I got back, he had gone. After a lot of deliberation, discussing it with my partner at the time, I decided to raise a complaint. I was invited to use a new part of TSSA policy, which was a form of mediation, rather than using the grievance procedure, which I really regret now. I should have raised a grievance and had it investigated as a grievance. We met in Manchester. He was accompanied by someone from HR. I was accompanied by my GMB rep. He looked me in the eye and he said to me, "I don't remember doing this, but I know that I did do it because you say that I did it. I was very drunk. I don't remember anything. I know that isn't an excuse. It won't happen again." He said sorry again. And we shook hands and he left the room. And I thought, that will be enough. You know, I can keep my job, because that had been a discussion with the people I'd taken advice from. Am I likely to keep my job if I raise this? I was told that it had happened a lot of times before, that if I did raise a complaint, I would be the first woman to do so. 6 months after the incident at the Christmas party, the whole lot of us were in Glasgow for a Network Rail event where there was a meal on the first night. I was sitting at a table opposite a colleague of mine, and she said to me, "Manuel, he's really staring at you." So I looked over at him and he was really staring at me. We all ended up back in the hotel bar where Manuel was again, extremely drunk, and followed me around the room. Stood behind me saying, hey, how are you? To the point where 2 other colleagues came over, pretended that I smoke and said, "Do you want to come outside with us for a cigarette?" I said at the time, why aren't people joining together and organising on this issue? This is clearly a collective workplace matter. The response I got was, nobody wants to lose their job. There'll be questions raised over your performance. That's what happened to me, and that's what's happening to another colleague right now. I had mental health issues. So I had complex PTSD and panic disorder when I left the GMB. That was under a certain amount of control when I started at the TSSA, but the incident with Manuel triggered it again, and I started to struggle with the symptoms of complex PTSD, so flashbacks, fatigue, depression, anxiety, irrational thoughts. I was at a colleague's house following a night in the pub with Frank Ward and Lorraine Ward. She'd overheard a conversation between me and Luke Chester where I was saying to him that some of the reps that we were working with were sexist, and some of them were racist, and that I was finding that really unacceptable. So her way of dealing with that was to say, well, what are your ideas? So we'd all had lots to drink. We'd been having a good time. Suddenly the atmosphere was hostile and I was under the spotlight. I was deep in performance management at this point. So my situation was pressurized, to say the least. I drank a lot that night and missed my train. Luke Chester said it was okay to stay at his house, as I had before, without incident. We were kind of pals and drinking buddies. But when we got to his house that night, I was talking to him about what had just happened with Lorraine Ward and saying, "Do you think it's going to be okay? You know, I'm really worried now." And he just said, "I'm going to give you a little bit of advice now. I think you're broken. You need to get your shit together. The reps don't want to work with you because you're crap." And then he said, "Look, I'm not a nasty guy. When my girlfriend gives me a blowjob, I put a pillow under her knees." And then he said, "I am not trying to get a blowjob here, but if you can show me that you care about this union, I can take your problems away." He was threatening me and he was gaslighting me. Then I got word that my line manager was leaving our team and that there would be a new line manager. And as soon as I heard that, my heart fell through the floor, because I knew that Luke Chester was going to go for that job, and I knew that he was going to get it, and I knew that he was going to become my line manager, and all of those things happened. My mental health just, plummeted. I couldn't function. I couldn't stop crying. So I called in sick. I had to call him to call in sick. And then later that day, I got a letter inviting me to a stage 3 capability hearing. I just thought, this isn't fair. I'm going to get sacked at that meeting and I need to raise a grievance. So I raised a grievance about the whole lot, about everything that had happened. Most of my witnesses weren't contacted. Some of the witnesses who were spoken to lied. Following that incident at the Christmas party in 2018, I was told 3 times by my line manager that there was a package on the table for me, an exit package, should I ever wish to discuss it. Last year, 2021, I realised that it was time to discuss that package, and I was told that there was no such thing and that had never been said to me. Eventually, through a series of meetings, we managed to come to an agreement over an amount of money that would be paid to me. And to have that money paid to me, I would sign an agreement agreeing not to speak ill of TSSA in public, basically not to talk about what had happened. A lot of talented women have been lost to the trade union and labour movement. A lot of women who had a lot of things to offer aren't there anymore because they've been mobbed out by misogynistic abuse. The thing that we need to do is unfortunate but very obvious. We need to speak about it and do what we would tell our members to do. This is a collective workplace issue. It is ruining people's lives. It's leaving people without their jobs. So for God's sake, we need to come together and speak out about it and insist that it ends and get rid of the perpetrators.
Thanks. And it was a very, very brave thing that Claire Laycock did to speak out. Sarah mentioned before that it's not 1 or 2 trade unions, the problem of misogyny, the problem of the squishing of democracy, and this is part of a symptom. The misogyny is part of a symptom of that. And there's plenty of else wrong. There's racism and transphobia, homophobia, all sorts of things that absolutely have no place in trade unions that are meant to be transformative, but aren't at the moment. But yes, the problem is in every union. However, there are some unions who have been very, very darkly and very starkly found out. The GMB, General Municipal and Boilermakers Union, famously had a big report about 3-4 years ago now called the Monaghan Report, which went into the culture, went into the sexism, went into the drinking, went into the misogyny, and it was really, really, really damning. Unfortunately, they have not yet reformed. And one of my unions, you just saw them talking about TSSA, which is a small transport union, the General Secretary that Claire was talking about was absolutely notoriously known in the trade union movement, like a lot of General Secretaries are, and other senior members, of being drunk out of control. Often that's seen as an excuse. They were just drunk. They wouldn't do it when they're sober. Well, it doesn't matter whether they're sober or drunk. They shouldn't be doing it anyway. But it was a kind of really open secret. I didn't even know that. I mean, I never worked for a union. I was a lay rep, industrial rep in my area, which was Transport for London at the time. And it was actually after I'd left that I realised that there were all these women who were really being abused in the organisation. And we started to come together and talk about it. And we were talking with sisters across unions too, and started to form Me To You, like the Me Too but Me trade union. Quite shocked that we had to do it, and realised that this has been going on for years and years. Of course, how many women have tried and not been able to? How many women have raised a grievance but it's been turned back against them? How many talented women have been just bullied out the movement or never really got started, because it happens to very, very young women and to women throughout their lives. And that film was a very brave testimony by Claire Laycock, who decided that she was just going to break her non-disclosure agreement, which is meant to shut you up. You get paid off and shut up. And we'd met with Zelda Perkins, who was famously, had a non-disclosure from Harvey Weinstein, so one of the most powerful men in the world and the richest men in the world, kind of getting the biggest lawyers on her, and she broke hers, and she's encouraging everybody else to come out and stop the use of these. And then Claire decided, right, I'm going to go for it. I'm just going to do a video and I'm going to say everything. I've gone beyond caring. And we dropped that right in the middle of the union conference 2 years ago, which was quite a kind of bombshell in the trade union movement. And, well, it's not like going to the national press and it'll be all of the national press. But you can go to the national press and you still don't really get anything apart from people go, oh, isn't that awful, but it doesn't start a movement. Enough people saw it within the trade union movement that they really had to act. And the TUC, the Trade Union Congress, which brings all the unions together, who had gone to and ignored us, had to do something. And they told them to do a report. And the report was by Helena Kennedy, KC, who also brought out a really damning report into TSSA. But I'm afraid we're not nearly there yet. In spite of everything we've done, in spite of 7 senior leaders been dismissed. We have a new regime, and which is sadly actually mainly women, who are very close to the ones that have gone, and they're starting to pay them off. And our staff in TSSA actually have, they've been bullied for years and they're not taking it any longer. So they've gone out on strike against the trade union to change things, to have some transformative change, and to make sure that all the processes are adhered to. So it is dark, but we are getting more and more sisters in, and supporting brothers, and we're trying to get people to ask if you're in a trade union or you're in a trades council to support us and bring us along to speak and tell us what's going on, and so we can all change this together. And I can't remember, have we got the... Oh, yeah, so to go back to the GMB, this is way after the Monaghan. We then became aware of a senior member of staff there who was really badly harassed, and of a myriad of things going on, even though they'd had the report, they'd meant to have done this transformation, and they clearly hadn't. So we're going to show a clip from that too.
I'm a woman who worked in the GMB union. I worked there for about 10 years, and I reported directly to Gary Smith, the General Secretary. In 2020, the union had a report called the Karen Monaghan Report, which detailed how the organisation was institutionally sexist and that there was a culture of bullying and misogyny. One of the recommendations of the Karen Monaghan Report was the introduction of a new sexual harassment policy implemented in May 2022, the same day that I lodged my sexual harassment complaint. Following that, I was victimised by being removed from the workplace based on unsubstantiated vexatious complaints by my perpetrator. Following my removal from the workplace, I was then written to by the union's head of HR, Emma Johnson, and told that the union was refusing to even hear my sexual harassment claim. They then allowed my perpetrator back into the workplace. And in September, I launched an employment tribunal case. After that, on the 22nd of December, my friend phoned me up in a panic because Gary Smith, the General Secretary, had phoned her, screaming at her to tell me that if I didn't sign a settlement agreement for my employment tribunal case with a wide-ranging gagging clause applied to me, by 9:30 a.m. the next morning, he would have me sacked. I was so frightened and traumatized that I signed it. In January 2023, I was told I couldn't return to work until I had a return to work meeting. My return to work meeting was not held in a GMB premises, and there was no HR present. Instead, the General Secretary hired a hotel room in Newcastle. During that meeting, I was victim blamed and told that I had driven a wrecking ball through the organisation because I had launched an employment tribunal case for sexual harassment. I tried to return to work, but was not allowed. Instead, I was told I had to have a second return to work meeting. It was again not held with any HR present, not held on a GMB premises, but instead the General Secretary made me attend a meeting, again, in a basement of a London hotel.
I seen somebody who was in a very, very bad place mentally. And I'm not being patronising, but I also see this vulnerable wee lassie at times, and I know how destructive this whole thing has been for you.
I was a victim of an abusive man, Gary. And I'm not the only victim of that abusive man, but I am also a victim of that abusive man.
We're not going round the body about that, because there was choices as well that you made and reactions and all the rest of the stuff that was talked about. I agree with you.
You agree?
I agree.
I was a victim of an abusive man.
Yeah. Once you get into a fight with a big organisation, yeah, we're going to come out swinging, and we'll have better lawyers than you, and it'll be more expensive. That's just what happens. You put a gun on the table, people just start shooting back. You start a shooting match, don't negate a match once you pick a fight in the manner that we did. And there's a learning for you, don't get into that game. Because yeah, everything then gets turned into something else.
Which is what I believe is happening now in terms of the weaponisation of cases and a process against me for having spoken out.
Is anybody in the, I was going to say in the hall, in the tent, in a trade union? Brilliant. Have any of you ever experienced anything like this in your unions? Please don't feel like you have to say anything, or you can come and grab us afterwards at the end, but we just thought we'd kind of open it up to anybody having any thoughts or points that they wanted to raise.
Yeah, thank you. So I won't say what union I'm in, but I guess I don't have experience of sexual harassment within the union. I'm a workplace rep rather than like a paid union official. But I do have friends that have worked for the GMB and have experienced just unbelievable misogyny, sexism, had to leave the GMB. So, yeah, and kind of felt that really like with them. But in my experience of certainly like union officials as a workplace rep, is a lot of misogyny directed towards us, especially like when we're perceived as women, like we're very, very much spoken down to. They insist on attending meetings that we schedule that aren't appropriate for them to come along to, and then kind of take over the running of that meeting a lot of the time, respond quite with hostility when we ask them not to attend, and then claim that we're being hostile, which is just a really interesting kind of like turning it around. And I think I struggle a lot with being part of like the quote unquote like rank and file aspects of the union who really don't want to engage with like paid union officials. But I think like there has to be, like certainly around this issue, there needs to be that connection of like, we need to drop that rhetoric. And I'm just interested kind of like, how do you see that going forward? How do we connect up better with the people that are, you know, we are critiquing the mechanics of the union, but actually like standing in solidarity together with one another around that? Don't know if you have any thoughts.
I think it's very easy to... So I am kind of part of the bureaucracy now, and that sits quite heavily on me at times. But I am very much... The members are the trade union, and we should be led by them, not telling them what to do. Even if, you know, all our officers come from the food industry. I worked at Greggs before I worked for the trade union. We had a similar approach as a group of reps. We decided we didn't want the officers coming to our meetings at conference, our organising meetings, because we wanted to decide what we wanted to do to organise our workplace, not be told how shit our employer was by people that had never worked within it. And I think that is something that we've got to empower our members, and we've got to get them to remember that they are the trade union. And in terms of kind of standing in solidarity with each other, I don't think it matters what trade union you're in. Everybody's a worker, and if one set of workers are having trouble, then we all should be standing together in solidarity. But sometimes we just need to know that solidarity is needed as well, you know. I'm not sure I answered that very well, but I just think we've got to remember that the General Secretary's at the bottom of the triangle, not at the top. The membership should very much be there telling us what to do, and we should be accountable to them very much so. And we've moved away from that as a movement, which is where we're going wrong, I think.
I think what you said, I'll just come back in on that, and I think what you said resonates so much with so many women that we've spoken to, and well, actually, so many rank and file, you know. So just that, unfortunately, the systems that we have are far too hierarchical, and a lot of the time the trade unions kind of mirror almost more like a corporation than they do, you know, the corporations as much as corporations that we're actually struggling with our members in, and it's very exclusive. So we're not going to attract more people. We're not going to attract more sisters when it's difficult to organise. We're not going to attract more sisters when it's structurally difficult, or it's always in the pub, or it's always, for example, in transport unions. There's a lot of male union officials who are even vying with each other, and it's very off-putting for people. And we really feel that it's an intersectional problem of all the things that are wrong with the trade unions, and if we could break through that, we'd have really strong trade unions that are really about people and about change. But sometimes it seems to be more for the people that are in in the work and in the kind of positions than it is for the members. And there's a huge axis between the trade union movement and the Labour Party as well. So, for example, in the GMB, I mean, now it must be a huge number, but when there were very few Labour MPs, I think there were 200, we found out that 80 of them were sponsored by the GMB. And actually quite a lot of them had quite dark histories themselves. It was almost like a way to control people or something. It was very, very, very weird. But we're encouraging everybody to see this as a kind of a movement for change. It's not just about misogyny. It's about how we reclaim the rank and file at the time that we really need it. Because, you know, we've got a massive fight with everything constantly. Climate change, and those same people who are squishing us are going backwards on climate change in the unions, then going backwards on militarism and all sorts of things. So, you know, it's a very interconnected fight. And sorry, you have a question or a comment.
Thank you very much. I don't know if I need this. I've got a very loud voice anyway. But yes, you're thinking solidarity. You're talking about solidarity. I'm thinking women's aid, and I'm thinking the police. The police in the last 2 years have undergone such a major change in terms of how they respond to things like that sexual abuse and harassment that Lady Claire was talking about. They would not have stood by and let that happen. They would have said, right, you know, here, this is how to prosecute. Is that what you want to do? We're going to do that. Because there was enough evidence in that report, enough witnesses to actually have taken that man down. That was unacceptable behaviour. God knows where the men were in that situation. It seemed to be, was it women saying, like, come outside for a ciggy, get out of the way? No, what we need is men standing up and saying, that, mate, is unacceptable. That is not how we treat anyone, let alone a woman. You do not do that. Get out of the way. They should be strong-arming him out the way. Now, where were they? Where were they? And that's what we should be focusing on in any kind of organisation. Let's train, excuse me, fellas, I'm sure you're here because you're good blokes. Let's train the blokes how to behave, how to intervene when bystanding becomes cowardice, and what bullying is and how it should be stamped out. But absolutely, that Claire person the police would have stood by her, the police would have prosecuted that guy, and he'd be in jail if he went near her again with any kind of approach like that, sexual abuse or intimidation. He would have been in jail. So things have changed. Things are changing. Women's aid, bang on. I went to see them myself 2 weeks ago, went to see the police over a harassment situation, and they are, oh my God, they've just been so supportive. They know what they're doing now. They've trained people up to recognise sexual abuse, sexual harassment. They know what they're talking about. So I really do think things are changing. You're on the crest of a wave, but we need to actually act in solidarity with other people outside the trade union. We need to see what's going on with the police, what's going on with the courts, because that's changing. We've now got, I was looking at a PhD recently on gaslighting. Now the courts are taking gaslighting seriously. They've never done that before. Things are changing, and you know, we can take the confidence and courage from that and actually ride with that and add our voice to that. So thank you for what you're doing here. Thank you for those ladies sort of standing up and saying it. Thank heaven for people who are standing up and talking about it, because that's what's going to make the difference. Women have been silenced for so long, and that is something that men have stood by and allowed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry to hear about the harassment as well, but it's really good about absolutely moving forward. And sadly, in the trade union movement, where people should not be bystanders, a lot of unions cover for each other. So it becomes this conspiracy of silence. And what we're trying to do is also, you know, break through that with people on the ground and activists and people who see what's happening and give each other courage. And also do, you know, sort of be visible. So what we did after the film came out about the GMB, which fell in the middle of women's TUC, we then did a protest outside the GMB. We're going to have a short bit of film about that.
International Women's Day, stop the use of NDAs. International Women's Day, stop the use of NDAs. International Women's Day, stop the use of NDAs. International Women's Day, stop the use of NDAs.
Today we're at the GMB at their headquarters, and they've shut the headquarters down, we believe, because we were coming. I don't know whether they're scared of their own members and they're scared of women.
It shows the issues that we have is that GMB aren't listening to women, and women that have come forward to speak about their issues and that have been brave enough to come forward with their stories are being bullied out of the movement.
We know so many women have been bullied out and continue to be bullied out. They bring a case of sexual harassment, they bring a case of discrimination, and it's turned back against them.
The General Secretary is personally responsible for bullying out some individual women who have been very brave to bring their cases.
Gary Smith is a bully, and I think he's got to go, he's got to resign. I'm absolutely disgusted, I'm so embarrassed and ashamed of my union. I do not consent to my hard-earned subs being used to bully and harass women out of work.
What seems to have happened here is totally unacceptable, and the trade union movement must do better. This is all of our problem, and we have to face it.
Bring back Karen Monaghan now! 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 Bring back Karen Monaghan now!
We're still a union run by white men. I complained about my white branch secretary and my white branch chair. We're a branch which is 90% women, and my complaint was brushed under the carpet. I tried to appeal, and I was told there is no right of appeal.
When it comes to a union raising an issue about another union, there is a real reluctance to do anything about it, and that is one of the fundamental things we have to challenge. More than 50% of trade union members are women.
It's absolutely a systemic problem. We've had reports from the TSSA, we've had reports from GMB. No one has a clean conscience in this. Everybody needs to do more to work to get better, to improve things for our women.
Unfortunately, our trade union movement is rotten from the inside out, and sexism, racism, homophobia is endemic, and it's down to each and every one of us to challenge that.
Sometimes it's said and sometimes it's unsaid that if you raise your concerns, if you complain about harassment or victimisation in the trade union movement, you're doing it down, you're part of an existential threat, you're discrediting it. What is discrediting the trade union movement is sexual harassment, abuse, rape, victimisation and bullying, then attempting to silence the people who have had that experience, and then the silence of senior people in all unions in not speaking out when they're seeing that happen. So I call on all of the leaders of all of the main unions, please say where you stand, because we know where it ends when that doesn't happen. Jimmy Savile, predatory priests.
We have to change the power balance in our unions from below. You know, we are the grassroots, we are the rank and file.
We need to use our women's networks more. We need to get the support from outside that maybe we're not getting within our own unions. As women, we need to get more involved in our unions, because the more of us there are, the louder our roar.
Yes means yes and no means no. Gary Smith has got to go. Yes means yes and no means no. Gary Smith has got to go. Yes means yes, no means no. Gary Smith has got to go. Yes means yes, no means no. Gary Smith has got to go.
So we hold about every 4 to 6 weeks a Me Too meeting. It's online. It's a safe space for sisters to join, find out, you know, what we've got coming up. We've had some disclosures in the meetings, but that's not, you know, mandatory that you have to do that. There's no pressure on you to keep your video on. You can change your name because, you know, sometimes we've got multiple people from the same union in there. So if you would like to get involved and come on to one of those meetings, grab us at the end and we'll add you onto the mailing list, because it'd be great to see you. Especially, you know, you've taken the time to come and listen to us tonight. It'd be great to see you and listen more to you. What else do we need to do?
And I think we think that although a lot of the subject matter is very dark, it is a force for change, and that can only be exciting. We've had a lot of younger women come to speak to us recently about some incidents that happened at big trade union events, and they've got a plan, and we've got some exciting things coming up. We also always welcome an invitation to come and speak, you know, to your branch or to the Trades Council. We do things like we're doing quite a few festivals with Glastonbury, we're at Boomtown, and we'll have meetings at TUC as well do a fringe meeting, so please do join us. But I think what's quite exciting at the moment too is there are now 3 staff unions. It's not all about the staff unions either. I'm also a lay rep, or was a lay rep. I never worked for the unions, and it's really important that it's throughout the unions. It's not just at the top. It's the problem throughout the unions, and it's in branches, and it's for members too. But the 3 staff unions, UCU, University College Union, had a problem with racism and a problem with the way that they're related to by their senior management, and the TSSA. We'll show you this time, just the last video. The staff are out on strike at the moment for culture change, and in the northeast, Yorks and Humberside, the GMB went out because. They've actually dismissed one of their own EC members now. You couldn't make it up. She was a lay member, an ordinary member. She'd been elected to the executive committee, and she supported the woman who spoke out about her harassment. And they've just got rid of her. It's just dismissed her. It's incredible. There's quite a fight back. Some people walked out the conference. I think in the GMB they were wearing our T-shirts, which is great. And we think the more we can link up and the more visible, the better. So I think it's quite a good moment for change. And we'll just show you, if there's time, it's a very short film about the staff strike. And, if you are anywhere near any of the staff strikes in TSSA is Bristol, London, Glasgow, and UCU is mainly London, I think, all over. But do come and support, because that would be really, really powerful. So we'll have all that information. We'll try and put it on our website and keep that up to date as well. I've got a website too. Thanks.
End victimisation, restore democracy. End victimisation, restore democracy. End victimisation, restore democracy.
The TSSA a couple of years ago had an investigation into their culture, which came out with a Kennedy report. The old leadership basically got cleared out, so we started again. We had an interim general secretary who agreed to implement all the recommendations in full. Unfortunately, when he left and we got the current general secretary, all of those things were taken off the table.
We got rid of 7 perpetrators, and now it seems that their friends are back and they're doing what they like in the union.
Essentially, the dispute is just about getting those things back on the table to try and restore the trust and culture within the TSSA.
Ever since our new General Secretary, Mariam Eslandus, was elected, very quickly all disputes emerged within TSSA.
We've seen our own members. We've got a couple that have been suspended on what we view as spurious allegations.
Unfortunately, our TSSA leadership then victimised a number of leading activists and created suspensions, including Fliss Premru, who was the most significant activist that exposed the sexual harassment of our previous regime. Steve Coe, who was our Assistant General Secretary previously, and Marios, who led brilliantly as president in the interim period when we had to transition from Manuel Cortez to our new General Secretary.
We think it's no coincidence these are people that have spoken out about the issues that are going on and have been quite supportive of the TSSA staff, our members that are out on strike at the moment.
I have a precautionary suspension with absolutely no reasons given apart from they're going to look into it. So it's not even an official suspension. You wouldn't expect any of our reps to tolerate that in any of the companies that we represent.
Paul Mangan, he was the EC member for London and South. Unfortunately, he felt he had to resign. It's not the first one. And the way it's going, he won't be the last either. He's a good man, he's got good morals and principles, and it's just a shame that it's come to that.
You would expect a trade union better than anyone to understand about negotiation and what it takes to resolve a dispute. We've been through ACAS conciliation, we've sat around the table. The leadership team won't even sit in front of us. We've always been in separate rooms with a conciliator sort of shuffling back and forth. It's quite shocking, to be honest.
They need to sit round the table and negotiate properly and stop all this absolute nonsense about a 12-month ban on strikes. It's absolutely ridiculous.
What's been really disturbing recently and is just abhorrent to the victims and survivors is that TSSA now is paying off perpetrators, including Luke Chepstow, who had an employment tribunal which he would have lost. They were suspending people who would have spoken at the tribunal. This is members' money. We also understand that they have allowed some NDAs, some non-disclosure agreements in some of these cases, presumably so people don't have to speak about how much they got or why they got it.
TSSA, get back on track. We need our democracy back. TSSA, get back on track. We need our democracy back.
We are just in the aftermath of a farcical TSSA conference. Farcical because of all the exclusions, farcical because of all the legal advice that allowed them to ditch most of the motions, and that's including motions to look at returning the women's group, Women in Focus, who'd helped make the changes demanded in the Kennedy and the Conley report, which was disbanded by the EC on a technicality.
A lot of branches put forward motions that were seeking to call the leadership to account, but all of those motions were ruled out of order by the President as being bullying and harassing of the General Secretary, which can't be credible and reasonable. The denial of delegates to attend conference when they would normally have been allowed to attend smacks of a real significant attack on our democracy of our union.
Members are lacking support. We've just been in paid talks. There's been no negotiation.
TSSA, get back on track. We need our democracy back. TSSA, get back on track. We need our democracy back.
It's very unique in recent times that we're actually starting to see staff and trade unions starting to take strike action, and I think that speaks volumes in terms of the widespread issues that are taking place.
UCU and the GMB in North Yorkshire and Humber and TSSA. We really need structural change in our unions, for not just for head office staff but for all our members.
We need to be doing some work in terms of looking at the governance of trade unions, the fact that we see misogyny, sexism, toxic practices, racism taking place and transphobia, that is it any wonder that we're seeing declining involvement of young people in trade unions and women are being put off.
We ask that everybody come and join the staff on the picket lines, that people do not give the General Secretary, Mariam Eslamdoust, a platform when she is clearly abusing her own staff, abusing her own members. She got a lot of support from outside bodies at conference when she'd refused to use her own staff. This is verging on scabbing. It appears that MeToo, who were invited to Toll Huddle last year to speak about sexual harassment and bullying and how we reclaim our unions, we appear not to be invited this year. And yet we know that Mariam is billed on meetings and has a platform, and we'd ask all those people in that meeting to ask that she is not permitted to speak or to refuse to speak themselves in an act of solidarity.
Our union's been sabotaged by its leadership, and that has to stop. We won't stand for people being victimised by our own union.
End victimisation, restore democracy. End victimisation, restore democracy. End victimisation, restore democracy.
Thank you very much for joining us this evening. If you want to give us your email, you can go on our mailing list. That would be great. We've got a few T-shirts. If you want to come and just take a solidarity picture with us at the end, that'd be great. And yeah, join us and let's reclaim our unions, make them democratic unions, to be fighting fit for the future that we know that we need and can make. Thank you.